Welcome back to Health Simplified. Today we're diving deep into something we should all appreciate more, our livers. It's kind of funny how we often forget about it until there's a problem.
So true. It's easy to overlook, but it's actually amazing what this one organ does for us.
Yeah, we've got a ton of info here, from Johns Hopkins to Stanford, even the Mayo Clinic.
Oh, wow. And liver-specific charities, too, like the British Liver Trust.
You bet. Plus the American and Canadian Liver Foundations. And to top it all off, we've got some practical tips from WebMD too.
That's quite the mix.
We're going to use all of this to see if we can unlock the secrets to a healthy liver.
Should be a fun ride.
I think a lot of folks will be surprised by what we uncovered today. I know I was. Just reading through this material, the sheer number of functions the liver has is mind-blowing.
It's definitely a busy organ, that's for sure.
The Canadian Liver Foundation actually says it has over 500 functions. Talk about multitasking.
Really puts our daily to-do lists to shame, doesn't it?
Absolutely. So what are some of the things it's juggling?
Well, for starters, everything you eat and drink passes through your liver. It's constantly filtering toxins, regulating hormones, even producing bile.
Hold on, bile. What's that?
Well, it might not be the most pleasant thing to think about, but it's essential for digesting fats.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
And that's just the tip of the iceberg. The liver also stores energy, helps with blood clotting, and plays a role in building proteins.
Wow, so many things we take for granted rely on the liver. It's incredible.
It really is. I think the Canadian Liver Foundation put it best. They call it a powerhouse, an engine,
Yeah.
and a pharmacist, all rolled into one.
That's such a vivid way to describe it. It really gets the point across.
And what's even more amazing is its ability to regenerate. Even if 2/3 of it is damaged, it can still bounce back.
Talk about resilience.
Exactly. But as with anything in the body, things can go wrong, and that brings us to liver disease.
Right, we mentioned it earlier. And from what I've read, it seems like it's more common than we realize.
Sadly, you're right. And what's really concerning is that it can be pretty silent in the early stages. Often people don't have any symptoms until the damage is already quite advanced.
That's pretty scary. So what kinds of things can actually cause liver disease? I mean, I know hepatitis is one, but there must be others, right?
Oh, absolutely. Hepatitis, which basically means inflammation of the liver, is a big one. We hear about hepatitis A, B, and C all the time, and they're each caused by different viruses.
Right. And something I picked up from the Canadian Liver Foundation is that kids can get hepatitis too, so it's definitely not just an adult issue.
You're right. Good point. Liver health is important at every age.
Okay, so besides those viral infections, what else can cause trouble for our livers?
Well, you've got autoimmune conditions where the body's immune system actually attacks the liver.
Oh, wow, that's rough.
And then there are genetic disorders, for example, hemochromatosis. This one causes your body to store too much iron, which can damage the liver over time.
It's amazing how something like iron, which we need to survive, can actually become harmful if there's too much of it.
It's all about balance, right? And of course, we can't forget about liver cancer, which is a whole other beast entirely.
It's kind of overwhelming to think about all these things that can go wrong. It feels like the liver can be attacked from all sides. But before we get too doom and gloom, I think we should focus on what we can control. I'm sure many people are wondering what steps they can actually take to keep their livers healthy.
I'm glad you brought that up because there really is a lot you can do to support your liver health. And it starts with the basics: maintaining a healthy weight, eating a balanced diet, and avoiding excessive alcohol.
Those are things we hear all the time for overall health. But are they particularly important when it comes to the liver?
Absolutely. A healthy liver is closely tied to maintaining a healthy weight. And when we say a balanced diet, we mean focusing on whole foods like fruits, veggies, whole grains, and lean protein.
So the usual good stuff, basically.
Exactly. And the American Liver Foundation specifically mentions avoiding those high-calorie meals, saturated fat, refined carbs, and sugary drinks.
Yeah, those sneaky sugars,
Yeah.
they're everywhere.
I know. The Canadian Liver Foundation also has a great tip for keeping the liver happy. Eat smaller, more frequent meals.
I've heard that can be good for digestion, too.
You're right. It helps keep everything running smoothly. Now, another big one is exercise. We all know it's great for overall health, but what about the liver specifically? Well, WebMD explains that it helps burn triglycerides and improves insulin function. Both of those are key to preventing something called non-alcoholic fatty liver disease.
Okay, so healthy weight, balanced diet, regular exercise. Those are the big three for liver health, right?
Definitely. Those are your foundation. But there are some other important things to keep in mind, too.
Like what? Fill us in.
Well, vaccinations are crucial for preventing hepatitis A and B, and Johns Hopkins, WebMD, and the Canadian Liver Foundation all agree on that.
I think I'm up to date on those, but I'll double check.
Always a good idea. And while we're talking about things to avoid, let's address the elephant in the room.
Mm.
Those liver cleanse products you see advertised everywhere.
Oh yeah, those. Are they legit?
Well, the Canadian Liver Foundation is pretty clear on this one. They're mostly marketing hype, and they can actually be harmful.
Yikes. I'm always a bit wary of anything that promises a quick fix anyway.
Good instincts. Now, here's another one that might surprise you. Supplements. Did you know they're responsible for nearly 25% of all liver damage? That's according to WebMD, at least.
Wow, 25%. Seriously. I always figured supplements were pretty safe since they're, natural.
That's a common misconception. Some herbs, like borage and comfrey, actually contain compounds that are toxic to the liver. The Canadian Liver Foundation recommends always talking to your doctor before starting any new supplements, just like you would with medication.
That's a really good reminder. And speaking of medication, there are some that can be hard on the liver, right?
Yes, absolutely. Acetaminophen, also known as Tylenol, is one that often comes up. WebMD and the Canadian Liver Foundation both warn about overdosing on it. You can actually do serious liver damage that way, even if you're not intentionally going over the daily limit.
So even over-the-counter meds can be a risk.
Exactly. It's important to be mindful of what you're taking, read labels carefully, and talk to your doctor about any medications you're using.
Okay, that makes sense. Is there anything else we should be watching out for in terms of protecting our livers?
Well, one more thing I wanted to mention is that mixing medications and alcohol can dramatically increase your risk of liver damage.
Oh, the Canadian Liver Foundation mentioned that too. So if you're taking any medications, it's probably best to avoid alcohol altogether.
You got it. It's all about making informed choices to protect your liver.
Okay, so we've talked about a lot of things we can do to help our livers, but how do we know if something is wrong? What are the warning signs that our liver needs some extra TLC?
That's a great question, and it's something we'll definitely explore in more detail next time.
So how do we know if something's up with our liver? What should we be looking out for?
Well, that's the tricky part. Liver disease is often called a silent killer because early on, you might not have any noticeable symptoms at all.
Really? No signs.
Not always,
Uh-huh.
but as the damage progresses, some red flags can pop up.
Okay, like what? Give us some examples.
Well, one of the more obvious signs is jaundice.
Jaundice.
Yeah, it's a yellowing of the skin and eyes. Basically, it happens when bilirubin builds up in the blood.
Bilirubin.
It's a waste product that comes from the breakdown of red blood cells. Normally, the liver filters it out, but if the liver is not working properly, the bilirubin can build up and cause that yellow discoloration.
I've heard of jaundice in newborns, but I didn't realize it could be a sign of liver problems in adults.
It definitely can be. And then you have the less obvious signs, things like fatigue, weakness, maybe loss of appetite, unexplained weight loss.
So things that could easily be brushed off as just feeling a bit under the weather.
Exactly. That's why it's so important to pay attention to your body and talk to your doctor if you notice any of these symptoms, especially if they're persistent.
Okay, good advice. So let's say someone is experiencing some of these symptoms and they go see their doctor. What kinds of tests can be done to actually check on liver health?
Well, there are a few different liver function tests that doctors can use. One of the common ones is a blood test that measures the levels of certain liver enzymes.
Liver enzymes.
Yeah, these enzymes are basically released into the bloodstream when liver cells are damaged.
So if those enzyme levels are high, that's a bad sign.
Generally, yes. But it's important to remember that it's not always a clear-cut diagnosis. Those enzymes can be elevated for other reasons too, like certain medications or even just strenuous exercise.
Okay, so you definitely need a doctor to interpret the results. It's not a DIY diagnosis situation.
Exactly. And depending on what those initial tests show, other tests might be needed.
Like what?
Well, they might do imaging scans to look at the structure of the liver, or in some cases, they might even do a biopsy.
A biopsy. That sounds kind of intense.
It can be, but it allows them to examine a small sample of liver tissue under a microscope. Sometimes that's the best way to get a definitive diagnosis.
Okay, so we've talked about some general signs of liver disease and how it's diagnosed. Now I want to dig a bit deeper into specific types. We've mentioned hepatitis a couple of times. Can you tell us more about that?
Sure. As I mentioned earlier, hepatitis just means inflammation of the liver. And it can be caused by a lot of different things: viruses, alcohol, certain medications, even autoimmune
Right,
disorders.
a whole range of things.
But let's focus on viral hepatitis for now, since that's one of the most common types.
Okay, so we've got hepatitis A, B, and C. What's the difference between those three?
Well, each one is caused by a different virus, and they're spread in different ways. Hepatitis A is usually spread through contaminated food or water. Hepatitis B and C, on the other hand, are spread through contact with infected blood or bodily fluids.
So like sharing needles or having unprotected sex.
Exactly. Now, the good news about hepatitis A is that it's usually a short-term illness. Most people recover completely without any lasting damage to the liver.
So it's more of a nuisance than a serious threat.
In most cases, yes, but hepatitis B and C are a bit more complicated. They can actually become chronic infections.
Chronic. What does that mean?
It means that the virus stays in your body for a long time, potentially years or even decades, and it can cause ongoing damage to the liver.
Oh, wow, that's not good.
Not good at all. In fact, chronic hepatitis B and C are major risk factors for developing cirrhosis and even liver cancer down the line.
So you might not even know you have it, and it could be doing all this damage silently.
That's the scary part. But on a positive note, we do have effective vaccines for hepatitis A and B.
That's great. What about hepatitis C? Is there a vaccine for that one?
Not yet, but the good news is that we now have highly effective treatments for hepatitis C.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Yeah.
these treatments can actually cure the infection in a lot of cases.
That's incredible. So vaccination and early treatment are key for those types of hepatitis. What about the other causes we talked about earlier, like alcohol?
Right, let's talk about alcohol-related liver disease. It's actually one of the most common causes of cirrhosis in developed countries. And it's not just heavy drinkers who are at risk.
Wait, really? I thought you had to drink a lot to damage your liver.
That's a common misconception. Even moderate alcohol use over time can lead to fatty liver disease, which is the first stage of alcohol-related liver disease.
So even if you're not, like, drinking every night, it can still be a problem.
Exactly, especially if it's a regular thing.
Hmm.
And the problem with fatty liver disease is that it often doesn't cause any symptoms, so you might not even know you have it until it progresses to a more serious stage.
Okay, so what are those later stages? What happens after fatty liver disease?
Well, it can progress to alcoholic hepatitis, which is basically inflammation of the liver. And then, in the most severe cases, it can lead to cirrhosis, which is scarring of the liver.
And we know cirrhosis is serious business. It can lead to all sorts of complications.
Absolutely. As cirrhosis gets worse, the liver starts to fail, and that can lead to fluid buildup in the abdomen, bleeding in the digestive tract, even confusion and disorientation. And in some cases, it can lead to liver cancer.
It's pretty scary to think how much damage alcohol can do, even in moderate amounts.
Yeah,
I think a lot of people don't realize that.
it's definitely something to be mindful of. And it's not just alcohol. Certain medications and even some herbal supplements can be toxic to the liver, too.
Right, we talked about that earlier. So it's super important to talk to your doctor about any medications or supplements you're taking.
Definitely. And it's also a good idea to be aware of your family history. Some types of liver disease, like hemochromatosis, have a genetic component.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. Different types of liver disease, symptoms to look out for, risk factors.
Yeah.
But what I'm still wondering is, what can you do, if you were diagnosed with liver disease? Is it like a life sentence?
That's a great question, and I'm sure it's one that a lot of people have. The good news is that it's not necessarily a hopeless situation. Depending on the type of liver disease and how far it's progressed, there are often things that can be done to manage it.
So there's hope.
Definitely. In some cases, you can even slow down or reverse the damage. But that's a conversation for next time.
Ooh, cliffhanger. All right, well, we've learned a lot today about the liver and the things that can go wrong. I'm definitely eager to hear more about what we can do to turn things around.
I'm looking forward to sharing that with you.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about liver disease. What can we do to actually heal and support our livers?
Well, the good news is that often there's a lot we can do. And it doesn't always have to be some big dramatic intervention. Sometimes it's really about making simple changes, sustainable changes to your lifestyle.
So back to the basics.
Yeah.
Diet, exercise, that sort of thing.
Exactly. We've talked about the importance of maintaining a healthy weight. If you're overweight or obese, even losing a small amount of weight can make a huge difference for your liver.
The American Liver Foundation really emphasizes cutting out those sugary drinks and processed foods, right?
Absolutely. Those types of foods just contribute to inflammation and fat buildup in the liver, which is exactly what you don't want if you're trying to heal.
So more whole foods, Less junk food. I think we can all get behind that. What about exercise? We know it's good for overall health, but are there any types that are particularly good for the liver?
WebMD mentions both aerobic exercise, like brisk walking or swimming, and strength training can be beneficial for liver function. The recommendation is to aim for at least 30 minutes of moderate intensity exercise most days of the week.
Okay, so keep moving. What about alcohol? We talked earlier about how it can damage the liver. If someone has been diagnosed with liver disease, should they cut it out completely?
In most cases, yes. Even small amounts of alcohol can be harmful to a liver that's already damaged. The best thing to do is talk to your doctor, of course, but generally, complete abstinence is the safest bet.
That can be a tough one for some people, but clearly an important step if you're serious about healing. What about medications? We talked about how some can be toxic to the liver as well.
It's really crucial to be upfront with your doctor about all medications you're taking, even over-the-counter ones. That way, they can assess the potential impact on your liver and adjust your treatment plan if needed.
And supplements too.
Absolutely. Supplements can interact with medications or have their own effects on the liver. Always best to err on the side of caution and talk to your doctor before starting any new supplements.
So those are all the lifestyle changes that can support liver health. But are there any medical treatments available for liver disease?
Yes, there are. And the specific treatment really depends on the type of liver disease and how far it's progressed. For example, with viral hepatitis, there are antiviral medications that can help suppress the virus and prevent further liver damage.
And for hepatitis C specifically, I know those treatments can sometimes even cure the infection completely, which is amazing.
It really is. It's a huge advancement in the treatment of liver disease. For other types of liver disease, like autoimmune hepatitis, there are medications that can help suppress the immune system, which in turn reduces inflammation.
And what about cirrhosis? Is there anything that can be done to reverse the damage once it's reached that stage?
Unfortunately, cirrhosis is usually irreversible, but there are treatments that can help manage the symptoms and complications. And for some people, a liver transplant might be an option.
That's obviously a major procedure, but it's incredible that it can be life-saving.
Absolutely. And the good news is that transplant techniques have come a long way, making the procedure safer and more successful.
So while there's no magic bullet for treating liver disease, there are definitely options available, and early detection and treatment are key.
Couldn't agree more. The earlier you catch it, the better your chances of preventing those serious complications and preserving your liver function.
Well, this has been quite a journey into the world of liver health. We've explored the liver's many roles, uncovered some surprising threats, and learned about different types of liver disease. But I think the biggest takeaway is that there's hope. Even when things go wrong, there are things we can do to protect our livers, and there are treatments out there to help us heal and live full lives.
I think that's a great message to leave our listeners with. Knowledge is power. And now that you know more about your liver, you can make more informed choices to keep it healthy and strong.
Well said. We hope this deep dive has empowered you to take charge of your liver health. And if you have any concerns, please don't hesitate to talk to your doctor. Remember, a healthy liver is a key ingredient to a healthy life.
And a happy holiday season.
Thank you for taking the time out to listen to us until next Wednesday. Stay healthy, stay informed, and happy holidays from our family to yours.